Hey there and welcome back to Mass Effect 2. My name is Pete and today we finally complete a pretty important mission in the game's main quest line. Today we complete the investigation of the Derelict Reaper. We were informed about this wreckage quite some time ago, and we want to investigate it to potentially obtain its IFF, its Friend of Foe Identification System, so that we can pass through the Omega-4 relay without being immediately torn to shreds. At least that is the theory. We'll see how that works out for us. Now for our squad, we want to bring someone who's good against armor, ideally with an area of effect ability, and Zaid with his Inferno Grenade perfectly fits that description. For the sake of obtaining a few additional morality points, we also want to bring either Jacob, Garrus or Tali, and since tech powers are less useful on this mission, we're going with Jacob, who also has incendiary ammo and the area of effect power pull field. He is then also the only squad member we can spend any upgrade points on, and we'll put those in his barrier ability, giving him some much needed protection. Now, weapons-wise, there is one important change we have to make, and that is to switch Shepard to the grenade launcher. You'll see why soon enough, but believe me, this weapon will have its uses. And that's already all. Let's see what this Derelict Reaper has in store for us.
What's with all the chop, Joker?
Doing my best. The wind's gusting to 500 kph. There's a second ship alongside the Reaper. It's not transmitting any IFF, but the radar paints its silhouette as Geth.
I guess we know why the science team stopped reporting in. What just happened?
The Reaper's Mass Effect fields are still active. We just passed inside their envelope. Eye of the Hurricane, huh?
Okay, here we are, and first things first, let's activate warp ammo on all of our important weapons before we then get going.
You said there's Geth in here, right?
Now, almost immediately, we see signs of battle, so it appears we are not alone. Before we meet our first enemies, however, we can have a look around and loot a wall safe for 2000 credits, a terminal right next to it for another 2000 credits, and a second wall safe for 4000 credits. And there is also a work log over here, which we should give a listen to.
The airlock has been installed at the far end of the hold section. We have begun pressurization for shirt sleeves work. The crew is edgy. I reassure them it is mere nerves, a superstitious reaction to what this hold represents. The corpse of a vast ancient life form. Privately, I can't deny the atmosphere. The angles of the walls seem to press down on you. I find myself clenching my teeth.
Okay, we obtain a Codex Entry and learn more about how the human research team got started, and the next steps of their work are also documented right here, next to two medical stations.
We finished cataloging specimens A203 to B016. No evidence of active nanotechnology noted. Dr. Chindana believes they would have decayed over the last 37 million years. There's not enough data to support his claim. He asserts that the truth is patently obvious. I am concerned. Chindana has been staring at the samples for hours. He says he's listening to them.
And that does indeed sound like the science team may have experienced the first signs of Reaper indoctrination. Let's keep moving to find out more.
Normandy to shore party.
What just happened?
The Reaper put up kinetic barriers. I don't think we can get through from our side.
You've got to be kidding me.
There are no morality points to be had here, but let's see if we can't shut the barriers off before we suggest more drastic approaches.
We'll have to take down the barrier generators from in here. Any idea where they are?
At the moment of activation, I detected a heat spike in what is likely the Wreck's Mass Effect core, sending the coordinates now. Be advised, this core is also maintaining the Reaper's altitude.
So when we take the barriers down to escape, the wreck falls into the planet core.
And that means everyone dies. Yeah, I got it.
And again, no morality points here, but let's say a few supportive words. That is the least we can do at the moment.
If any helmsman can pull us off this thing before it reaches crush depth, it's you. We'll make a sweep for survivors and recover what data we can. Stand by.
Aye, aye. Good hunting.
What the hell? Did the Geth do this?
Well, if they did, then we're probably running into them sooner or later. Perhaps this log entry here can tell us more.
You're married? You never mentioned that.
Katie had anger management issues. When my brother got married, the best man tried to hit on her. She kicked him down the church steps.
What? Katie's my wife. I must have told you this story.
No, I know my wife. I remember, that day was the only time I saw her wear stockings.
Yeah, the kind with seams up the back. That's what I remember too.
What the hell is this? How can we remember the same thing?
Reaper was messing with their heads. They do that, right?
Oh yes they do, and it's starting to look like the Geth may not have been the reason for the science team's demise after all.
Charge him up!
And well, here we go with the first fight of the mission. If the explosive crates did not already spoil it, the emergence of a group of Husks certainly tells us that this ship is not as empty as it first seemed, and keeping our distance here is key if we want to survive the encounter, because getting swamped by Husks is probably one of the easiest ways to die in this game. Even though there are multiple waves spawning in this fight, we can thankfully maintain some control over how things go down, because the next wave here only appears if we get close, so a bit of back and forth can make this first encounter a little easier.
I could never tell whether Husks were a Geth thing or a Sovereign thing.
Guess it's Reaper tech. Not that it matters to these guys.
Indeed, it does not really matter that much at this point, and as you have probably been able to guess already, we are in for more. Now, just like before, we are exclusively facing Husks and the occasional abomination, so nothing that should give us a lot of trouble individually, but as a group these enemies can be pretty dangerous.
Incoming!
By this point in the mission, you should also see why bringing some area of effect anti-armor powers is incredibly important. It's not like the Husks have a ton of armor, but as long as they have it up, they can't be hit with any other crowd control abilities, such as Jacob's pull field for example. At the same time, I don't think I have to mention how useful abilities like pull, throw or even shockwave can be in fights against Husks. After all, the main challenge is really just in slowing down the sheer number of enemies, and gunfire alone is not always capable of achieving that. Eventually though, the waves of enemies come to an end, we can collect some much needed ammunition and then learn more about the events that occurred before our arrival.
Third day with this headache. You'd think Chand and I would have let me have a few hours off. God damn! What? That thing, that just gray thing, it disappeared when I looked straight at it. It came out of the damn wall, where we took off that panel.
I didn't see anything. You should lie down.
I'm telling you, the ship isn't dead. It knows we're inside it.
Calm down. Now I'm getting a headache.
Right, looks like the indoctrination effects quickly got worse, and who knows, perhaps the poor guys we just saw on screen were the ones we gunned down a few seconds earlier.
Sniper! Someone nailed those Husks for us. Who?
Well, if you really want to find out, you can actually use a sniper rifle to zoom in on the walkway in the back here, but we're not going to do that. Instead, we will now skip the power cell crate, we'll come back to it in a moment, but grab the platinum, some credits and an upgrade.
This looks interesting.
Now, at this point, make sure to proceed very slowly.
On our left.
The room already looks like it, and the appearance of more Husks confirms it. We have more fighting to do, but with a few strategic choices we can make this entire section a lot easier. As soon as we reach the bottom of the stairs, Husks will emerge from the right, but as long as we don't venture further into the room, they will remain the only enemies for now. There are, again, multiple waves of them, but each one only consists of 2 Husks, sometimes one accompanied by an abomination, so all in all, taking them out should not be too challenging. Once they have been taken care of, however, things get more interesting. At this point, we want to send our squad members back a little and switch over to the sniper rifle, before we then run further into the room and immediately retreat behind cover. Our advance has triggered a large wave of Husks as well as a Scion, and that Scion is what we have the sniper rifle for, as we have just enough time here to land 2 headshots. Then we can pop out of cover and blast the incoming enemies with Zaid's Inferno Grenade, while we switch to the grenade launcher. One single projectile is capable of delivering instant kills to a large number of Husks, provided they are clustered closer together, which should be the case in this fight. As you can see, 2 shots are already enough to take out most of the opposition, and even though Zaid goes down thanks to the Scion's shockwave, we can now return the favor and take out the Scion itself. At this point, another large group comes running in. Sometimes they all appear at the same time, which actually makes things easier, so let's grab the grenade launcher again and quickly take care of business. And that's it. I will admit it took me a while to figure this approach out, but it works pretty reliably and turns this fight, arguably one of the tougher encounters in the game, into a very manageable affair. At this point, we can now also grab the heavy weapon ammo that we left behind earlier, and then we can proceed to explore the battlefield. Our way onwards is over here to the right, but once we go through there we can't come back, so let's sweep the area before we continue.
Chandana said the ship was dead. We trusted him. He was right, but even a dead god can dream. A god, a real god, is a verb. Not some old man with magic powers. It's a force. It warps reality just by being there. It doesn't have to want to. It doesn't have to think about it. It just does. That's what Chandana didn't get. Not until it was too late. The god's mind is gone, but it still dreams. He knows now. He's tuned in on our dream. If I close my eyes, I can feel him. I can feel every one of us.
And again, looks like the entire science team eventually suffered the effects of indoctrination. Up next, we can now collect some credits from a medkit, as well as another upgrade from the research terminal over here.
This might be useful.
At this point, we can now also have a short conversation, the one that we brought Jacob along for.
I've seen things like this before. On Eden Prime.
And of course, let's examine them further before we give our opinion.
See how the room is arranged? They treated this thing like some kind of altar.
You saying they wanted to have this done to them?
You heard the logs. They were seeing things, hearing things. They were being indoctrinated.
Asking Jacob if he's alright then earns us 2 Paragon points. Without him in the squad, the conversation would not have taken place, and we would have missed out on those.
How you holding up?
5 by 5, sir. Bad memories. It's not a problem.
And that is all we can do in this area after taking care of the numerous enemies. So it's now time to use that door that we passed by earlier, an important point of no return in this mission, so it might not be a bad idea to save the game at this point.
Commander.
Found our sniper. What kind of Geth talks? Knows your name.
Geth never work alone. They're smarter in numbers.
Right, so as we take our first steps in this new area here and immediately trigger the next group of Husks, we can think long and hard about what we just saw. Yes, that Geth unit just talked to us. It called us Shepherd Commander no less, and perhaps you saw it as well, it was wearing a piece of armor with a rather iconic red stripe. For now though, there is no time to talk to our unlikely ally, so with the first group of Husks defeated, let's restock our ammunition and proceed down the stairs. At the bottom, more Husks emerge and begin to climb onto the platform, and since we don't want to get swarmed here, the tactical retreat is actually a very solid strategic option. The fuel tank right where we started the section provides decent cover, and yes, cover is needed for this group of enemies, because it once again features a Scion whose shockwave should be avoided at all costs. Once again though, it looks like Zaid did not get the memo, and so we now have to take on the rest of the horde with only Jacob to back us up, and he is not the ideal candidate for that task. As you can see, the Husks are quickly becoming too much to handle, so we have no other option but to switch to hit and run tactics and leave Jacob to his demise. Somewhat surprisingly though, he actually lasts quite long, probably thanks to his biotic barrier, and only goes down as the last Husk falls as well. In the meantime, the Scion has slowly started to move towards us, which actually helped because that blocked its line of sight, but it is getting closer now, so let's grab some ammo and the sniper rifle and put an end to its advance. Alright, there we are with the second group of enemies in the area defeated. At least that is what it looks like. In reality though, more Husks will now emerge and we have to take those out as well before we can continue. Luckily, this group is much smaller than the previous one, and the Scion was also the only one of its kind, so this should not cause too many problems. Once all Husks have been taken care of, we can collect whatever ammo we can find. These types of fights are pretty ammo consuming, especially for weapons with lower magazine sizes like our assault rifle. Up the stairs here we can then turn left to access a terminal for 3000 credits before we find a medkit and more ammunition a little further in the back. Heading into the other direction, we do not want to get tempted by the next terminal in front of us here. Before we can reach it, we hear the sound of more Husks in the vicinity, and shortly after we can fire our first shots. In my opinion, this wave is not as dangerous as some of the ones we faced earlier. There is no Scion among them and we don't need to retreat to take them out or employ other elaborate strategies. The only things needed are a quick trigger and a bit of patience. After the fight, accessing the terminal then rewards us with 3500 credits, and once again we also want to pick up all available ammo we can find, because the fighting is not done yet. Halfway down the stairs we can therefore find more ammunition scattered around the medkit, and as soon as we reach the bottom the next fight begins. Now, this one is once again a little tougher. Enemy numbers in the area will quickly increase to a pretty nasty level, so I think it's best if we retreat once more to give ourselves some breathing room. This also achieves two other purposes. First, it funnels the Husks by forcing them to use the small stairways to get to us, and second, it also gets us out of sight and range of the Scion that is once again accompanying this group. You may have been able to see it briefly a few seconds ago. Thankfully it did spawn quite some distance away, noticeably behind the Husk spawning point, so we should be able to take out those Husks first before the Scion becomes an issue. And indeed, we have now cleared out the Husks and can now focus on the Scion, which is slowly approaching all by itself. And well, looks like what I said earlier is only partially true. Yes, we did manage to kill the Scion without being swarmed, but a second wave of Husks has now entered the fight, so we won't be proceeding past this area for a few moments longer. I have actually still not fully understood how the Husks spawning in this part of the mission works. It is pretty clear that they activate based on proximity, but sometimes they keep coming until all waves have been depleted, other times there is a break in between waves, like this time. It's all not 100% reliable in my experience, which only adds to the difficulty of this mission. Still, eventually we are able to clear out this group as well, and we can reward ourselves with some heavy weapon ammo and another useful upgrade.
This looks interesting.
Now, at this point we actually have a few seconds of peace and quiet, and even walking up the stairs here does not immediately trigger the next wave of hostiles. Instead, it leads us to another cache terminal. However, as we head back down on the other side, we do not want to proceed any further for now. Going this far was enough to trigger the next enemies, in this case another small group of Husks, accompanied by not one, but this time by 2 Scions. Needless to say, we want to do our best to split up those 2 enemy types, and by retreating a little here, the fast-running Husks will have no problem outpacing the slow-moving Scions, so we can easily dispatch of them to clear the path. Once they're all down, we can switch to the sniper rifle and just start taking potshots at our enemies, albeit very carefully aimed ones. The elevation of the walkway in the middle is enough to protect us from any shockwaves, and the rifle we have equipped is powerful enough to take both enemies out before they can get into striking range. And yes, this may feel like a bit of a cheap tactic, but considering the alternative, which would be tackling the Scions while being swamped by Husks, significantly more than we just took out, I might add, I think this tactic definitely has its justification. Again, once the 2 Scions have been taken down, let us stock up on ammo and take a look at what we would have faced had we decided to take a more brute force approach. For the next minute or so, we will now have these single Husks spawning from both the right and the left side, conveniently enough in alternating order, which makes this fight pretty trivial in my opinion. But keep in mind, these enemies would have made things a lot harder had we not dealt with the Scions beforehand. And to be honest, there is really not that much more to say about this fight. The only limiting factor here is really only ammunition, otherwise we could probably keep doing this for the next hour. Thankfully though, the wave ends a little earlier than that, and we can make our way onwards. Now, once again, it is time for the sniper rifle, and for the exact same reasons as before. The next area is home to not 1 but 2 Scions, which we want to take out before triggering the Husks that are obviously also once again part of the picture. Those Husks will be triggered as soon as we reach the bottom of the ramp that we're currently on, so we are definitely not going to leave that anytime soon, and instead we can just peek in and out, land headshots whenever possible, and the problem should be dealt with after a short while. By the way, from what I've seen, I don't believe the advancement of our squad members will actually trigger any new enemies, so if you have a companion like Grunt, for example, in your squad, there should be no issues sending him out to take on the Scions face to face. In any case, eventually the 2 Scions should no longer be a concern, and at that point we can finally move on. We will grab the ammo here, but skip the power cells. If I'm not mistaken, we should be close to or at full capacity already, so the precious ammo would go to waste. Still, since another point of no return lies ahead of us, we will have to grab the power cells before continuing, so at some point during this fight we are going to use the grenade launcher again, just to get the most out of the ammo refill, but not necessarily because we have to. At this point, I can perhaps also offer a slight bit of critique regarding this mission. I think the rather monotonous nature of the fighting in this mission is really detrimental to what is otherwise a pretty unique setting, especially combined with the mysterious Geth unit that we still have not yet found again. Don't get me wrong, blasting through hordes of fragile enemies is definitely entertaining to some extent, especially as a bit of a power fantasy showcase near the end of the game. But after a certain number of repetitive encounters, the fun kind of gets lost. At least that was the case for me in this mission. Jacob then also gets to share the pain here, because I forgot that the grenade launcher deals damage to everyone in the blast radius, even allies. But luckily the fight is also about to end in a few moments, so we don't put ourselves at a major disadvantage by accidentally taking him out of action.
Now we just have to destroy the Mass Effect core.
Then we get the hell out before planetfall.
So, looks like the plan is clear. Before we get going though, let's take those power cells with us that we passed by earlier, grab a medkit along the way, and then head towards the exit. Right, so in here we have the Reaper IFF on the left, but before we grab it, let's loot the wall safe first and obtain another 2,500 credits.
This must be it.
So the Cerberus team did recover it. But where are they now?
Right, so first things first, as soon as we regain control of Shepard, we want to do as much damage as possible to the glowing blue thing in front of us until it closes its shutters. That thing is the Reaper core, and we have to destroy it to end what looks like a seemingly endless onslaught of Husks. To start off this part of the mission, those Husks and the occasional abomination are pretty much everywhere on the map, so staying in motion is a good way to remain alive. At some point during the fight, we also want to make our way over to the left side of the Reaper core, where a laptop holds 1000 credits, a nice little sum that can easily be missed in the heat of the moment, and unfortunately it can also not be recovered after the fighting has ended. Once we have grabbed the money, I actually found it worthwhile to remain in one and the same spot, so that's where we're currently going, the corner just to the right of the Reaper core. Staying there provides us with two strategic bonuses. Number one, it blocks any more Husks from spawning in this location, and number two, any Husks approaching us from the other side of the battlefield will, for some reason, always use the stairs in the back, never those right next to us. Speaking of strategy, the overall tactics for this fight are really quite simple, even though the fight itself takes several minutes and depending on how it's approached can be one of the more dangerous in this mission. Destroying the Reaper core is the key objective, yes, but as long as there are Husks on the map, we can safely ignore it. The core will open at some point and become vulnerable again, but you don't have to shoot it immediately, it will stay open until it is damaged. That means we can focus our entire energy on the Husks, who themselves keep spawning until the core opens. Once the core has opened, no more enemies will appear on the map, so at that point we can clear out the remaining stragglers, focus on the core afterwards, and then begin the whole game again. Once the core takes enough damage, in our case 2 sniper rifle shots, it closes again, and the Husks also start spawning again. And this cycle will have to be repeated 2 or 3 more times until the Reaper core is destroyed. Now, there are ways to speed up that process, most notably the use of the M920 cane. A single shot aimed at the Reaper core can actually destroy the thing immediately, but it should only be fired after the map has been cleared of husks, otherwise the cane might lock onto one of those as its target, and I don't think I have to mention what a colossal waste of ammo that would be. You can of course also start shooting at the Reaper core as soon as it opens, and that probably makes this fight a little shorter as well, but this approach would also never stop the flow of husks and could therefore get you overwhelmed quickly. Not to mention that amidst the continuous onslaught you might not be able to do as much damage to the core. One husk landing a hit and even just briefly staggering you could be the difference between landing that second sniper shot and the core closing again. By the way, that humming sound you can hear in the background is your audio cue for when the Reaper core opens, so you don't need to check its status by constantly looking at it. The game does a pretty good job informing you of that, and the humming should be noticeable despite all of the gunfire. One more thing, if you have recently played this mission yourself, I would actually be interested to hear which weapon you think works best against the Reaper core. In my experience, the sniper's very high damage output per shot already does a great job making the most of the limited time we know that we have to do damage to the core, but perhaps other weapons actually perform better, for example because of their ability to provide constant automatic fire. I have not tested this all that much, but at least the burst fire of the Vindicator assault rifle is in my experience inferior to the sniper rifle. There are other weapons with much higher firing rates in the game though, so let me know if those are perhaps better suited. Now at this point, since we are going back to fighting husks for what looks like the last round, I also want to point out that yes, Morden's Incinerate, specifically his Incineration Blast, probably works a little better against the Husks armor than Zaid's Inferno Grenade, because Incinerate has a much higher damage output. However, the Inferno Grenade can technically cover more ground as it explodes into many smaller fragments, and the husks are not that heavily protected, so even the reduced damage compared to Incinerate is usually enough to strip away their armor. Additionally, Zaid can also dish out a bit more damage and has slightly better medium-range firepower thanks to his proficiency with assault rifles, so overall I prefer him as the squad member. For storyline reasons, picking someone else is perfectly fine of course. Grunt for example can be useful, and again Morden is pretty decent as well. The combo of Zaid and Jacob did work out for us though. As you can see, we are about to deal the finishing blow to the Reaper core, and then we need to get out of here.
Never seen a Geth that wasn't blown to pieces. I'm tempted to mount the damn thing on a wall.
Leave it. No way that reaches the Normandy.
Tally said no one's ever captured a Geth intact.
Quarians know not to try. You sure about this?
There's no time for a debate. Move out.
Hang on, folks.
Open the port side area. We're clear. Go.
Alright, there we are. We have completed our investigation of the Derelict Reaper, and thus we unlock the Ghost Ship achievement. We also advanced to level 29, so we're just shy of the game's level cap, and interestingly enough, without giving us a choice in the matter, we have taken the Geth on board of the Normandy, a decision that we will discuss with the crew in just a moment. This mission was also pretty generous in terms of upgrades, as we obtained the heavy skin weave as well as damage upgrades for the shotgun and the sniper rifle. Additionally, we earned 50,000 credits and 2,000 platinum, and that completes the report. Let's return to the Normandy now.
We need to discuss the unique piece of salvage we recovered. For now, we've stored it in EDI's AI core. We need better equipment to fight the Reapers. An intact Geth would be invaluable to Cerberus' cyber weapons division.
We'll have to disagree on that, ma'am. I saw enough of these things on Eden Prime. Space it.
Cerberus has a long-standing cash bounty for an intact Geth. I assure you, the reward is significant.
Right, so of course, before we make a decision, let us point out a few curiosities about this particular Geth unit, which might also help our crew understand why we eventually decide the way we do.
I've killed hundreds of these things, but I've never had a chance to talk to one. This one tried to communicate with us. Hell, it probably saved our lives. Why?
Reactivating the Geth is a risk. If you do so, it should be for humanity's best interests, and not your curiosity.
I still think our best interests involve an airlock.
I want to know why it has a piece of N7 armor strapped to its chest.
Battle trophy, maybe? Would a machine care about that?
No, trophies imply emotions that AIs don't have. I doubt it's more than a convenient field repair.
And here we can now decide whether or not we want to keep the Geth, and of course we do. Not only is it the Paragon choice, but as you just heard, there are many unsolved mysteries about it that we definitely want to investigate.
I'm not deciding one way or the other until I know what we've got here. I want to start it up. Interrogate it.
If we activate it, there is no guarantee we can deactivate it again.
Bullets can.
That's not what I...
Thank you, both of you, for your recommendations. I've made my decision.
Tally's gonna freak when she hears about this. So what about this Reaper IFF?
I have determined how to integrate it with our systems. However, the device is Reaper technology. It is important we test it thoroughly before attempting the Omega-4 relay. It will take some time to properly integrate it with our own systems.
Are we talking hours or days?
Impossible to say. The technology is complex. The crew will begin work immediately.
Okay. Until then, we keep building our team.
I'll let you know when the IFF is ready for shakedown.
And here we are. Making the decision in favor of keeping the Geth also unlocks the Friend or Foe achievement, and with that we have reached the end of today's episode. My apologies that new videos in this series are coming out a little slower than in the other two. I only have so much time and occasionally some sacrifices need to be made, but of course this series is still alive and we will definitely play through the game until full completion. Speaking of which, in the next episode we will take a closer look at that Geth unit we just obtained. Who knows what sorts of information it has to share with us. For today though, let's make the cut right here. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe or check out and maybe pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.